Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you today about how Strategic Pathway 2 of the IGIF can be used to enable emerging geospatial technologies. As leaders and professionals within national mapping agencies, you sit at the center of one of the most important transformations in our field. Emerging technologies, from artificial intelligence to small satellites to real-time sensor networks, are reshaping the way geospatial information is collected, used, and analyzed. Just a little background about myself. I began my career as a satellite imagery analyst. After graduating from law school, I have been working with businesses, government agencies, and intergovernmental organizations at the intersection of geospatial technology and the law. What do we mean by emerging technologies? Emerging technologies are those technologies that are still developing but have the potential to significantly impact society, industry, and the economy. They tend to disrupt existing practices and force new ways of thinking. In the geospatial context, emerging technologies often allow us to collect data faster, more accurately, or in ways that were not possible a few years ago. The key point is that these technologies evolve quickly. That means legal and policy frameworks, which often move much more slowly, must find ways to keep pace. Understanding this tension is essential for national mapping agencies as they plan their long-term strategies. There are numerous examples of emerging artificial intelligence. There are numerous examples of emerging technologies. Artificial intelligence enables predictive modeling and enhanced decision-making, but it raises issues around transparency, ownership of training data, and accountability when AI systems make mistakes. Autonomous systems allow real-time and automated data collection, but they raise questions about airspace regulations, safety, and responsibility when things go wrong. And IoT devices create continuous streams of geospatially referenced information, but they also introduce cybersecurity risks and interoperability challenges. As you listen today, think about where these technologies intersect with your agency's responsibilities. There's often a duality to emerging technologies. On the one hand, technologies such as AI are dramatically expanding what is possible in terms of geospatial analysis and automation. On the other hand, these advancements create new legal and policy challenges because they change how data is collected, shared, and used. For example, more sensors and satellites mean more data about people, infrastructure, and national assets, but they raise questions about privacy, data quality, cross-border data flows, and security, issues that fall outside the typical technical focus of national mapping agencies. Understanding this balance between opportunity and risk is the first step in building a future-ready framework. Emerging technologies, regardless of type, have several common elements. They collect different types of data, they collect more of it, they collect it at a higher quality, and they collect it in new ways. They also make it easier to analyze and visualize data in ways that were not previously possible. These characteristics are exactly why legal frameworks must adapt. When the volume and sensitivity of data increase, so does the legal implications. When the analysis becomes more automated or algorithmic, issues like liability, transparency become more complex. National mapping agencies must anticipate these shifts. There are several major legal categories that emerging technologies touch. Intellectual property affects ownership of data sets and algorithms. National security concerns arise when geospatial data reveals sensitive infrastructure or movements. Privacy becomes more important as geospatial data becomes more granular and tied to individuals. Data quality impacts liability if decisions are based on faulty data and cause harm. Regulatory requirements shape what can be collected, how it can be used, and who it can be shared with. Cybersecurity and licensing introduce yet more layers of complexity. These are not issues for lawyers alone. Technical professionals must understand them because they affect data management at every stage of the life cycle. National mapping agencies need to know a simple but important truth. Lawmakers are paying attention. Around the world, governments are passing new regulations on AI, data sharing, privacy, and digital infrastructure. These laws directly affect the geospatial domain, even when they are not written specifically with geospatial data in mind. The reality is that emerging technologies will reshape legal frameworks. The question for national mapping agencies is how to prepare. How do you ensure your systems, your data policies, and your partnerships align with laws that may not even exist yet? Strategic Pathway 2 gives us a structured way to approach that challenge. Now let's turn to Strategic Pathway 2. SP2 provides a structured approach for developing a sound and enabling legal and policy framework for geospatial information management. The language here, structured approach, is deliberate. SP2 is not an ad hoc set of ideas. It is a framework for countries to use to evaluate laws, develop policies, and ensure geospatial data can be collected, shared, and used effectively. What's particularly important is that SP2 helps address the legal issues arising from emerging technologies. As we just saw, technologies like AI, Internet of Things, and automation raise questions that didn't exist or weren't as pressing even 5 years ago. SP2 offers a way to logically think through these issues, breaks everything into 4 elements: legislation, policy norms and guides, data protection, license and sharing, and governance and accountability. We will walk through each of these elements separately. Legislation refers to laws and formal regulations that act as a legal backbone for geospatial policies and operations. While some countries have laws specifically addressing geospatial information, in many cases the laws that matter most are indirect. Laws that protect intellectual property, contract law, privacy laws, cybersecurity, and national security laws. A key point to emphasize is that legislation takes a long time to enact and often even longer time to update. When laws change slowly but technologies change quickly, countries can find themselves relying on legal frameworks that no longer reflect how geospatial data is actually collected and used. That gap can create uncertainty and risk and can delay implementation. Understanding which legislation enables the effective and safe use of emerging technology and where it restricts such use is a fundamental objective of SP2. Unlike legislation, policies, norms, and guides are generally aspirational and non-binding, but they are incredibly important. They provide best practices and help governments interpret laws in a consistent and efficient manner. For national mapping agencies, policies and guidance often fill the practical gaps between what the law requires and what agencies actually need to do day to day. They're also much easier to implement and update. As emerging technologies evolve, policies are often the first tool governments can adjust to ensure they remain responsive. Good policies can prevent minor issues from becoming major legal challenges later on. The third element is data protection, licensing, and sharing. These govern how data can be used, who can use it, and under what conditions. They also address questions related to safeguarding data, managing risk, and establishing data sharing protocols. For geospatial agencies, these policies affect the availability and accessibility of data. They influence how national mapping agencies work with the private sector, how data is shared across government, and how sensitive information is protected. These instruments may not have the same authority as national legislation, but they often have significant legal effect and directly shape how geospatial data is handled day to day. The fourth element of SP2 is governance and accountability. This refers to how responsibilities are assigned and how oversight is managed within the geospatial ecosystem. Effective governance is essential because emerging technologies increase complexity. More data sources, more partners, more automated systems. Clear roles and accountability mechanisms build trust among stakeholders. They allow organizations to collaborate without confusion over who owns which decisions, who is responsible for data quality, and who must respond when things go wrong. Strong governance also supports transparency and ethical use of geospatial information. Without it, even the best technologies and policies cannot function as intended. It is important to remember that legal issues associated with emerging technologies do not fit neatly into one legal category. They cut across multiple domains: intellectual property, liability, regulatory requirements, contracts, national security, data protection. This means many government agencies have a role to play, whether directly or indirectly. For example, privacy authorities, cybersecurity agencies, and even finance ministers may all influence geospatial data practices. Because of this, legal integration across other strategic pathways is essential. SP2 provides the connective tissue linking geospatial management to broader national legal systems. It underpins governance, data management, and standards across the IGIF. It is the foundation that helps ensure that technologies are used in a reliable, consistent, and legally sound way. When SP2 is applied strongly, agencies can innovate with confidence. They can adopt new technologies knowing that their practices align with national laws and international norms. They can also collaborate across sectors, public, private, and academic, because the rules are clear. In this sense, SP2 is not simply a legal pathway, it is an enabler of national geospatial capability. As an example of how Strategic Pathway 2 can support other strategic pathways, we can look at Strategic Pathway 1. Strategic Pathway 1 deals with governance and institutions. SP2 provides the legal mandates and institutional arrangements necessary to give each organization its authority. For example, SP2 can help clarify which agency has responsibility for collecting data, who has authority to share it, and who bears accountability for quality or security issues. Without this legal clarity, governance can become fragmented, leading to duplication, uncertainty, and inefficiency. SP2 can provide the foundation that makes coordinated governance possible. There are several methods for identifying legal and policy needs. These are stakeholder groups, tabletop exercises, regulatory sandbox, and formal gap analysis. Each provides a different perspective on the challenges and opportunities presented by emerging technologies. A stakeholder group can provide an independent and informed review of a country's geospatial policy and legal framework. It brings in voices from across the government, the private sector, and the legal community. Such a group can help identify inconsistencies, highlight areas needing reform, and offer practical recommendations. For example, it may point out where data sharing rules are unclear, where privacy tools need strengthening, or where licensing practices need updating. It can also support government agencies in drafting, consulting, and revising legal instruments. Tabletop exercises are simulations of real-world scenarios involving emerging technologies. These exercises might focus on disaster response, cross-border data sharing, or AI-enabled analysis. The purpose is to highlight legal ambiguities and identify outdated policies. Tabletop exercises help participants understand not only what the law says, but how it functions operationally when multiple agencies must coordinate quickly. They also reveal bottlenecks, places where approvals or authorities or responsibilities are unclear. These insights are incredibly valuable because they show how legal frameworks operate under real pressure, not just in theory. Tabletop exercises can be one of the most practical tools for understanding what works and what needs to be improved. Tabletop exercises can be both in person, hybrid, or now with AI, they can be virtual or simulated. For example, this slide introduces a simulated tabletop scenario involving a metropolitan area launching a smart city initiative. This initiative integrates massive amounts of geospatial data from sensors, drones, satellites, and other devices. This scenario is useful because it touches on many of the issues national mapping agencies face: data volume, data diversity, interoperability, public-private partnerships, and legal risks. Because smart cities involve so many stakeholders, it can be hard to bring them all together to run through a tabletop exercise. A useful substitute is a simulated tabletop exercise using AI. You can include simulated stakeholders in the tabletop exercise to help identify the legal and policy issues from their perspectives. In this case, I have identified representatives from the National Geospatial Organization, a Data Protection Authority, Transportation Department, the Energy Agency, Homeland Security, and the construction industry, along with a legal expert as a moderator. This cross-sector representation is intentional. To provide more context, you can upload into AI the respective authorities and responsibilities of each stakeholder organization, as well as other relevant legal and policy documents. The results can then be confirmed by sending them to the respective organizations for review and comment. A regulatory sandbox is a controlled testing environment for new technologies under temporary, relaxed, or modified regulations. The purpose is to encourage experimentation and innovation while minimizing risk. In a sandbox, government agencies work directly with technology developers to test in new systems. This allows regulators to understand how technologies behave in real-time conditions and identify potential legal issues early. It also allows innovators to refine their products before they are deployed nationally. For geospatial systems, sandboxes can be especially useful when testing technologies like AI analytics, real-time data integration, or new forms of automation. They provide a safe learning environment for everyone involved. In concluding, I want to highlight some key messages. First, emerging technologies present both tremendous opportunities and significant challenges for geospatial information management. They enhance what we can collect, analyze, and visualize, but they also introduce new legal, ethical, and operational risks. Second, Strategic Pathway 2 provides a structured, adaptable framework to address these issues. SP2 supports every other IGIF pathway by ensuring that legal and policy foundations keep pace with technological change. Thank you for listening today, and I have concluded my contact information. If you have any questions, you can send me an email. Thank you.